I'm Jim Drisko from Smith College, and my charge is to talk a little bit about content analysis. And I noticed this morning in the introductions, nobody had any interest in content analysis. And that actually makes some sense to me because it isn't clear that this is actually a qualitative method. That what content analysis is about historically has been looking and coding in an open-ended basis, usually deductively, a set of existing texts, so that one might look for content on suicide or diversity in social work textbooks and see relative to the total amount of page space or words, how much relate to those content areas. So you're coding in a qualitative manner, but then you move to a frequency-based statistical quantitative form of analysis. That's traditional content analysis. But I had the opportunity to write a short pocket guide on content analysis with Tina Mashi from Fordham. And it turns out that there's actually a growing qualitative content analysis thread in our literature. A lot of it comes out of Germany. And interestingly, they're looking at taking qualitative approaches to analyzing content. And they tend to be fairly realist pragmatist. I haven't seen people taking a critical perspective on the content. But for me, it's raised a very interesting issue. And I had the great advantage of Jane Gilgun being one of the reviewers for this text. Hans Krippendorf, who's the man in content analysis, was the other. And they had very different responses. But it's not clear that when one does qualitative content analysis, whether there's any innovation of method, that people interpret and basically summarize and describe, which would be maybe thematic analysis for an analytic strategy, and then there are more interpretive approaches. But these are nascent. They're probably only 15 years old, and much more in the European literature than in the US literature. But it for me, begged the whole question of if content analysis as a method is done qualitatively, what are the boundaries between qualitative content analysis and thematic analysis, grounded theory? And I think there's a lot of territory for further development. But in social work, some would say that content analysis is the most widely used qualitative method. And in our databases, content analysis is a keyword for qualitative research in the US in social work and psychology, and there are very few others. But that's my thumbnail pitch. There are a variety of methods, and that one should not just think of this as the traditional qualitative coding, frequency-based statistical analysis approach, because there are more truly qualitative.
I'm a sociologist, so when I learned first about content analysis was because Krippendorf, Berlo, and other very, very, for me, forgotten authors. I mean, like thinking on now, in this decade, in the new millennium, thinking on content analysis based on Krippendorf now is like working with computers. Working with computers and probably having some new algorithms, that what is the algorithms doing? Pick up the keywords, put the keywords in context, and then the interpretation exactly is your task. But the basic question still remains, what is content analysis for in the way that you are trying to point it out? There is quantitative content analysis, or there is qualitative content analysis, and I know that some German good qualitative researchers have been working on that. One of them is Meiring. But at some point I'm also very concerned about how content analysis is dispersed in social science, just in the way that you have mentioned it. Something like in social work, appears like content analysis, like one of the qualitative methods that is must be applied or something. And what is content analysis for? Just to have the frequency of keywords, or even to create an inventory of the basic themes. And who decides who is the team, right?
Right.
Who decides who is the team is, for instance, when we are trying to do content analysis of interviews.
You raise a great question, which goes back, I think, to what's your research question? And in social work, there's a long history, actually, of doing content analysis. Some interesting things came up in doing the text. There is in psychology a tradition of having people do diagnostic interviews. So they're asked a fairly standard set of questions. You know, how did you grow up? Who cared for you? Did you have any trauma? And it turns out, literally by counting kinds of words, nouns and verbs, people could be diagnosed according to DSM categories with about 80% reliability. So there's some amazing things that kick out. And then there's this other use of it, which is you take social work textbooks and you look at end-of-life content. Usually you're using the content analysis to advocate for more of what you've studied. And this I find actually kind of charming too. So they find that 3% of a typical social work textbook is about end of life. Now, does that include, losses from accidents, or is it all about older people dying? So the definition matters. And we're back to the research question. And then the other question that has always been to me really unclear. At the end of the day, you have 3% on end of life. And the argument is there should be more. But I don't know, is 3% okay? I mean, there might be 3% on, medical conditions. So, you're making an argument, but it's not contextualized vis-a-vis anything else. It's not 3% on end of life, but, 30% on diversity, or 20% on engagement. So it's interesting how it's used.
In the Spanish-speaking world, there is a very hard confusion about doing grounded theory methodology, analyzing, for instance, interviews, using open coding at the very first level, in the way that open coding is like a content analysis. And that's something like, wow, how? That there are connections, or even there are some Spanish books on grounded theory that, in fact, what they are talking about is about content analysis. And I have lots of discussion with these young authors that are becoming too lately to the grounded theory methodology discussion, and they are confusing that. No? And what is the problem, I think, is at some point the strategies to discover the meanings. But the meanings not behind of the words, but in the words. I mean, something like the meaning is in the way how the language has been used.
Is it literal or interpreted?
Exactly, that's the question.
Your comment, Cesar, about content analysis involving open coding, I think that's accurate to a point. But again, the purpose is usually a little different. It tends to be more descriptive in content analysis. Or, basically, I think most forms of qualitative analysis start there. And description is almost an inherent part. But in grounded theory, you're looking to go to concepts and develop theories. So you don't just stay with description, you've got to interpret its purpose and its use. And I think a lot of students get lost in that, which raises yet another issue, but it's a tangent, so I'm just going to make a statement. I think we don't educate our students well enough about this. And so they have part of a course on grounded theory, and then they go do it, and do it in ways that I find often unrecognizable.
No, but I mean, but then it's not just happening in Spanish-speaking world, right?
No.
Not at all.
It's universal. Yes, I think that's cool. I mean.